Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Tank. We are on the phone with a guy that puts the Zazz in Kansas. Keyboardist Tom Brislin. Their latest album is called The Absence of Presence, and frankly, it's taken prog rock to the next level. It's amazing. You guys should definitely check it out. And more importantly, the first must-see show of 2024 here at the Florida Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brislin.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I checked out Absence of Presence, and I'm so impressed with the way you guys have kind of honored the past, but moved the music into the future.
Yeah, I was jumped into that process of making that album when I first joined the band. They'd already started working on it, and they welcomed me into that process, co-writing and playing all over the album. And I was learning all the classic Kansas songs at the same time so we can play them in concert. So that music was swimming around in my mind, and it was bound to leave a mark on what we were creating for sure.
Now, you joined the band in 2018, is that right?
Yeah, at the end of 2018, they announced I was joining, and my first concerts were at the beginning of 2019.
And you were also in the band, yes. So what's it like to kind of join a legendary band like that?
Yeah, that was back in 2001. At the time, I was in Meatloaf's band, and I was raised on that 70s rock, especially Yes. They were the heroes, the posters I had on the wall. And in the year 2000, I saw them tour with Kansas, believe it or not, the Masterworks tour, and I loved the show. I met the Yes guys, and little did I know that 1 year later I'd be playing with Yes, and 19 years later I'd be playing with Kansas. So, that playing with Yes in '01 with the orchestra on the Symphonic Live DVD and that tour, that kind of opened up the floodgates to all the prog rock bands, and that part of my musical brain was certainly activated, and it's no mystery that I'm still doing that kind of music now.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's kind of like playing for the 80s Cowboys and the 2000s Patriots. If you love that kind of music, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than those two bands.
Yeah, such iconic groups that really made such a big impact on rock music, and especially the progressive rock side of things.
Now, since you're the keyboardist, you must have started out as a piano player. Were you like a child prodigy, or was piano, keyboards even your first instrument?
Piano definitely was the first thing I gravitated to. There's photographic evidence of me banging on the piano when I'm 2-3 years old, and it was like the center of entertainment in the house. So, I'd amuse my siblings and my parents by playing around the piano, and then, my sisters were my first piano teachers, and then, I took lessons with the other kids in town, and but it was just always something I gravitated to, and even like creating my own songs and trying to form a band since I've been 10 years old. So it was just something that was just always kind of automatic in my life, and something that I knew that I was going to be doing.
Do you remember the name of your first band?
Oh, man, I think we probably spent more time trying to figure out a name than actually playing.
Isn't that the way it always goes?
It really is.
So do you remember the first time, think about the first time you ever wrote a song. Do you remember that process and how it felt, or what it was about, what it was called? Do you remember any of that?
Well, I remember that I was drawing album covers and things like that before I even was done with the song. And I think that had to do with me looking at those great albums and learning how to read and reading that this was a team of people, players that came together, and each one had their own role. It was like a superhero squad, And so I think that I may not remember the actual first song, but I do remember that I liked the whole process of the creation.
So you're more like, maybe that speaks to the way that you're, wired with the piano being such a ambidextrous instrument. You have to have so much going on in your head. Maybe that speaks to like your broad thinking ability kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting because, at the same time I was learning how to read music out of those, red books that so many of us had to learn out of when we were kids, when that time was done, I was still just creating and learning things by ear, because it was a great way to amuse the family, saying, okay, here's a theme from Star Wars or The Greatest American Hero or something like that.
Oh my God, I loved that
I
show.
was, yeah, right. I mean, back when TV theme songs had like 2 verses, a bridge.
Oh, I miss those. Remember, the TV theme songs were like hits. They were bangers back then.
Well, yeah, because you just had that captive audience. You know, you'd be hearing it every week, and but moreover, it was just something that I was able to kind of start my learning by ear process, which was kind of going hand in hand with me learning how this instrument, the piano, worked.
At what point did you kind of realize that this is what you wanted to do? Was that always? Was that immediate?
I'm really fortunate to have had that sort of driving force in my life and that clear path laid before me. I think I've been in a continuous string of bands since I was 12 years old.
That's amazing. And you did some solo stuff as well. You had some solo stuff, and
yeah, I did an album called "Hurry Up and Smell the Roses," and that was after a band that I led for many years called Spiraling. We put out some CDs of our own, and then I did the thing where, I hid myself in a house with a bunch of instruments and see if I could make an album kind of thing.
And you did all the instrumentation on that album?
Mostly.
That's amazing.
Most of it. Just as sort of an experiment, because I dabble with drums and a couple other instruments. But really, keyboards is my first home, and of course, and the vocals, that kind of followed. I always thought I'd be a backing vocalist, mad scientist on the side with the keyboards, and that's kind of where I'm at with Kansas now. So it's kind of come full circle.
Yeah, the Kansas stuff is crazy because you think about like joining a band that you love. Did they make you audition? What was the process of getting into the band Kansas?
I got the call to join from Phil Ehart, the band's original drummer.
You were drafted.
Member, and yeah, he heard me with a group that I was with called See Within, which was on the same label as Kansas. And we were sort of more of a recording project, but we did a few concerts. And the label head said to Phil, get this guy. And they had known me from my work with Yes, and also a short stint with the group Camel in the 2000s. So they knew about me and knew what I was doing. So I just got that call to join, which was very unexpected, but of course really welcome.
Yeah, obviously. And was it intimidating, or was your work with Yes kind of something that prepared you for working with, people that you looked up to?
They all had their role to play, all the groups that I played with, but I would really say that Meatloaf, playing with him prior to Yes, he was the one that got me really acclimated to playing the big stages and how to work with that energy of a large audience and playing music at the highest level I possibly could. So I got that star struck stuff all out of my system. Even when I was like 24 years old.
Yeah.
There's no time for that,
Sure.
You just had to get down to business and deliver. And with Yes, that was a whole other level, because I had been so intimately familiar with that band and the musicians and the music that they'd done that it was kind of funny in a way. Like I thought it was like a virtual reality. Here you get to play with your favorite band. But like I said, there was no time to get starstruck. You just had to get down to business and rock out.
It's like having a fantasy team and then like, okay, you're actually the coach of this team now.
Yeah, it's like a movie sometimes, I gotta say.
What was it like working with Meatloaf? He seemed like he would have been like a really cool guy.
Yeah, because getting into his band, I had been a young musician hitting the clubs and playing pretty much anywhere I could, and with him, he saw where I was in my experience in life, and he took me under his wing, and everyone, the band had prepped me that it's no small job being the pianist for Meatloaf. You got to be on your toes.
Well, yeah, there's so much piano in his music.
There is, and he's such a theatrical performer that he would pause for dramatic effect whenever he felt like it. You couldn't just be on autopilot. You had to really listen. And I had I had studied jazz in college, and it was all about listening to the other musicians you're playing with and reacting to them and guiding the music in real time. So with Meatloaf, it was came pretty naturally, but it was really cool that he gave me those shots. And the first gig I played with him was on VH1 Storytellers.
Really?
So no intimidation there.
No, not at all.
3 days before, and big TV camera in my face. So
at 24 years old, no less.
Set the stage. Yeah, it set the stage for for years to come.
Were you pretty familiar with Meatloaf as far as his music before that, or being that young kind of didn't prepare you?
Oh yeah, it was one of those records in my siblings' collections that I discovered rock and roll with. Warner, yes, Kansas, Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, all the great records with the great album covers. And of course, you look at the cover of Bat Out of Hell as this fantasy picture and everything. I mean, how can a kid not want to check that out?
I will say till my dying day that 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad is one of the most underrated tunes of all time. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and we saw that night after night when we played it, and that was one of the other things that experience gave me, was a real appreciation for what this music and what a band means to someone, and the emotional effect it has. So it really taught me to take care of the music and take it seriously and play it the best I could. And
now that you're on this, you got to think like the 50th anniversary tour. This is a huge generational type band when you're talking about Kansas, and the Another Fork in the Road tour is coming to the Florida Theater January 12th. And you think about 50 years, how many people have not only listened to Kansas, but seen them in person? Do you feel like a huge responsibility to the music, even though you didn't write the first part of it?
Absolutely. That's like, and that was the lesson that was instilled in me from those previous bands I worked with, that, you get into something like this, you don't do it on autopilot, you go for it. And also, I like to geek out on all those vintage sounds. The keyboard is like a big palette of tones. It wasn't just playing organ or playing piano. You had all the cool sound effects and synthesizers, and the Kansas music is really flavorful when you really dig into it.
It really is.
Some people thought, some people think Dust in the Wind or We Represent, very straight ahead in a sense, but there's a whole world of Kansas music that goes to so many interesting places.
Now, what's funny is I'm literally from Kansas. I'm from the state of Kansas. So to us, that's like one of our only big bands to ever come out of our state. Where are you from originally?
I'm from New Jersey.
From Jersey?
This is where dreams come true.
It is. How many huge bands are from New Jersey? A lot. Some of the biggest ever.
Yeah, and this area was very big on the progressive rock stuff. You look at, down to Washington, D.C., all the way up to, Boston, that sort of strip of venues and markets, things like that, very, very big on the prog. So when we come down to Florida, or we go out to Kansas, play a home game, it's cool to see the reactions we get from, the local audiences, and how well this music sort of translates to all the kind of different nooks and crannies of the country.
It seems like a prog rock crowd might be kind of different from a rock crowd. Do you ever notice that like people come out and maybe aren't as familiar with Kansas's catalog, are a little bit surprised by the more proggy nature of some of especially the new stuff? I thought the new stuff has such a good, like, futuristic prog rock sound.
Well, it's one of the things I love about this band is that we have the straight ahead rockers and the fun of a rock show. And there may be some people at the show that only know the songs they heard on the radio, but once you dig into the albums, there's this whole world of music. And I think that's like this band's superpower. Because, let's be honest, some people don't want to hear new music from a classic rock band.
Sure.
But with Kansas having that progressive element in the band, it's like there's a lot of fans that want to be surprised. They want to hear something new. They want to hear the story continue. And so that's like, it's the best of both worlds as far as I see it.
And that's kind of one of the things I've discovered. I do this segment called the Classic Rock Resume, where I try to like listen to people's other music and other bands and stuff like that. And there's so much undiscovered music. I mean, it's just a gold mine sitting on vinyl of songs we've never heard because we've been so conditioned to just listen to the quote unquote hits that there's so much music. We could never ever produce another song ever again in the history of time and still never hear every song. It's wild when you think about it.
Yeah, I'm discovering the catalogs of classic bands. Some people say, "Oh, what new music you're listening to?" And I'm like, I'm still working on Earth, Wind, and Fire over here.
Exactly. Right. Totally. Yeah. There's bands like Rubicon, like all these bands that you've never heard about on mainstream, and if you weren't around when it happened, you may not have ever heard. But they've got this incredible catalog of songs that are just out of this world, and you think like, wow, this was 1975. How did they were so futuristic back then. It still plays today. It's wild when you think about it.
It is. And the flip side of that is it is cool to hear artists making new music that have been around, because the audience has grown with the artist, and now we might be singing about things that are relevant to people with some life experience, let's say, so it's cool to hear what some of these classic artists have to say today.
Yeah, I always thought music was somebody else's worldview explained to us. So to listen to how things have progressed, pardon the pun, the way things have progressed for a band like Kansas from when they were, 25 years old to now. And you can hear that difference in not only their music, but also bringing someone like you in who's got, a different point of view. I mean, you could totally feel an evolution, and I think that's so important to keep the music going.
I agree. And also the sort of the common threads that go throughout the lineage of the band, because my own music gets really personal. And when I joined Kansas and I'm writing lyrics for them, or us as we are now, and they said to me, well, Kansas is more about the big picture, the topics that we talk about are, like you said, like the worldview, like it's not so intimate one-to-one. It's more about the big vistas and sort of the bigger questions that we ask ourselves. So knowing that helped me sort of, I'm still expressing my artistic self, for lack of a better term, but in the context of Kansas, it's like, oh, this is something that everybody can feel to a degree.
Kind of like casting a wide net, as they tell us in radio.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Is there ever going to be do you think a time for some Tom intimate stuff? Are you going to do that some other way? Are you going to express that in some other way, or are you satiated with just writing the stuff you're doing now?
I sort of write first and ask the questions later.
Okay.
So I'll write a song, and then after I've got it, I say, is this something, or is this vibing for Kansas, or is this a different kind of vibe? So if it's something different, I put it into the other category, and we'll see. I mean, if there's time, I love to just create music, and they've given me that room too. Although, since I've been in the band, I've been really focused on it, and I will continue to focus on Kansas. But yet the sky's the limit creatively. You never know what you're going to come up with and where it belongs.
Yeah, and then, you've got a lot of time. You're still a relatively young guy, so you got plenty of time to create and do more stuff like that, so...
I hope so. That's the thing. And it's like, I come up with the ideas at all the worst times, and I was saying, I've said it before that, like, okay, you think you come up with an idea for a song and you're like, oh, this is my greatest work. I've written my Stairway to Heaven. But if you don't get that down, like, Stairway to Heaven can leave.
Right.
you can forget that.
It can take the escalator to forgotten. Yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so I never assume that I'm going to remember it, so I just got to get it down. But the reckoning comes when, you look at all your voice memos and your notebooks and you say, okay, now I got to get back to these things and really craft them into something concrete that we can hear.
Do you ever get frustrated that your instrument is the least portable of all the instruments?
Oh yeah, and I've had bandmates that have reluctantly shared in my my burden of carrying this stuff around. Yeah, I mean, but it's funny. There's pros and cons. But I can throw on headphones and play in the middle of the night, which my drumming friends can't easily do unless they've got some electronic drums.
Very true. Even that's still kind of loud.
It's the price I pay for having the entire orchestra at my fingertips.
Yeah, you have a piano pit. It's keys everywhere. It's crazy.
Well, that's the thing that the prog rock bands really brought into it. Like I said, it wasn't just like I'm the piano player in the band or I'm the organ player in the band. It's like you're now the orchestra in the band.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of equipment.
It's also a lot of responsibility because, I feel like you could cover up a drum fill, guitar is such a, and I know there's a lot of improvisation to what you guys do, but at the same time, it's like, it's one of the more noticeable things in the band, And you guys have a violin, which is such a unique sound, especially for a rock band.
And that's what really put Kansas on the map, I think, was bringing that violin into the rock context and having all these symphonic keyboards and the soulfulness of that heartland sound that's at the foundation of all the music. It's really a great combination.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really excited about the show. Like I said, it is the first must-see show of the year, January 12th at the Florida Theater. Have you ever played the Florida Theater?
I believe so. Yeah.
It's a fantastic place.
And my band, when I had my band Spiraling, we played down Jack Rabbits and, played the clubs and these different places. So it's cool to see the different types of venues as I've gone through my career.
Jack Rabbits is my favorite place to see a show in Jacksonville, just because it's a little bit more intimate and it actually sounds great. And, it's kind of like a black box theater where the light's really good and stuff. And Florida Theater, I think, is one of the most beautiful theaters in the whole country. And they just got done refurbishing it, so it's pretty exciting. And I'm a big old fat guy, so the chairs, they were a little small. I think they fixed that. So
they made them more accommodating.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But at a Kansas show, I'm not going to be sitting down anyway, so it doesn't even matter. I'll be woohoo.
This 50th anniversary tour, it's been really great in those settings, in that beautiful theater, that classic legacy of show business, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a fun show, it's a rocking show, but it's also got a lot of emotional highs, and I think the theater is a great place for it.
Now, what about the crowd? Are you guys seeing a lot of generations at your show? You've got to, right? Everybody from 75, 80 years old to teenagers. Yeah,
there's a span of generations, and our music being part of the TV show Supernatural had something to do with that, with Wayward Son being sort of an emotional theme for that show, and so we've got those fans that have discovered us through those types of channels, and everybody in the middle. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention Supernatural, because you were also on is that kid's name Jordan Padalecki? Is that his name?
Oh, Jared
Padalecki. Yeah, he was he did the new Walker. You guys were in an episode of that, right?
Yeah, we were down to play in Austin, Texas at the Moody Theater, and they were filming an episode of Walker in Austin, so we coordinated it so they would come in early and film us on that stage performing, and they incorporated it into one of their episodes that they happened to be going to see a Kansas show. And I think that was also kind of a love letter to all the Supernatural fans.
Yeah.
We were actually going to be on the final episode of Supernatural, but the pandemic changed the whole plan of that and the script and everything. So we were really bummed not to be part of that. And but those guys wanted to link up with us in some way, And, Jensen Ackles from Supernatural had directed that episode of Walker. So both of those guys were there. And it was a lot of fun to be on TV in that way.
That's so cool. That gave me chills, man. I didn't even think about it. That would have been so awesome to be in that last episode like that. Also, Jensen Ackles, fantastic in The Boys. Do you watch The Boys?
Oh yeah. It's a lot to take in, but me and one of our crew members, we like to geek out about that show, but it's hard to explain to some other people.
Dude.
Oh yeah, he's on that show, and they see this wild show, and they're like, "What's going on here?" But I keep saying I think some Kansas music belongs in that show.
I
could
see that.
Throwing Mountains or one of our new tunes
I
like
could
rocking
definitely
in that show.
I could see that for sure. Yeah, that's a perfect marriage right there. Look, Tom, I could keep you here all day because I love talking music and stuff like that. I know you got other things to do, but we are very excited to welcome you to Jacksonville on January 12th. Tickets available right now at thefloridatheater.com. New album, The Absence of Presence, out now. And Tom, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.